When you stop explaining yourself, everything changes. It's a phenomenon most people are barely aware of, yet it's a silent, almost invisible undercurrent that profoundly shapes a vast portion of our modern human relationships. This pervasive pattern is the compelling need to constantly explain oneself. On the surface, it seems like a benign habit, even a demonstration of politeness or thoughtfulness. After all, providing a rationale for your choices, articulating your emotions, accounting for your absences, or clarifying shifts in your mood can easily be mistaken for empathy or a considerate regard for others' feelings. However, lurking beneath this relentless drive to justify one's existence and actions lies a much more profound and unsettling truth, a deep-seated, unresolved psychological wound. Carl Gustav Jung, whose contributions to analytical psychology are monumental, meticulously identified this recurring pattern as a clear indicator of a fundamental disconnection from one's true self. From his perspective, the continuous and often exhausting effort to persuade others about who you genuinely are, what you genuinely feel, and the underlying reasons for your behavior is not an act of strength, but rather a revelation of a state of profound self-neglect. The individual who finds themselves perpetually explaining, clarifying, and defending their inner world is frequently seeking something they were tragically denied in their formative years: unconditional permission, simply to exist. This behavior often takes root and flourishes in environments characterized by systemic emotional invalidation. These are contexts, most frequently within family dynamics, where a child's deeply subjective experiences, their feelings, perceptions, and burgeoning sense of self are routinely and systematically dismissed, denied, or disqualified. Phrases like, "That's absolute nonsense, you're just making it up," or "You're clearly exaggerating, there's no need to feel that way," become ingrained messages. The internalized belief becomes a brutal decree. What I feel and experience only holds any validity or worth if others understand it, approve of it, or explicitly grant me permission for it to exist. As time progresses, this belief solidifies, transforming into an invisible yet suffocating prison, where the individual becomes wholly dependent on external understanding and validation to affirm the very essence of their own internal reality. When an adult finds themselves compulsively engaged in this explanatory dance, they are often unconsciously trying to avert the deep-seated fears of abandonment, harsh judgment, or outright rejection. The underlying hope is that if others can simply comprehend their reasoning, perhaps then they won't be criticized, won't create emotional distance, or won't ultimately cast them aside. It represents a desperate and tireless endeavor to control others' perceptions, all in a bid to secure a sense of belonging and fundamental emotional security. But this unceasing effort comes at an incredibly steep and detrimental price: the sacrifice of one's own psychological autonomy. By habitually directing their focus towards external validation, the individual inadvertently begins to neglect their own vital internal authority. They no longer act based on a deep-seated conviction or a personal belief, but rather because they feel an urgent need to justify themselves, to avoid the discomfort of being misunderstood. They cease to experience their emotions freely and authentically, instead rationalizing them, dissecting them, and explaining them away to bypass the profound discomfort of being viewed negatively by others. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, they stop living their life for themselves and instead begin to perform for others, caught in an eternal theater where the audience holds far more power and influence than the protagonists themselves. Jung recognized this phenomenon as a central and significant obstacle on the sacred path to individuation. That profound and lifelong process through which a human being genuinely becomes the unique person they are meant to be. And the truth, in its raw honesty, is harsh and unyielding. As long as there exists a constant, urgent need to explain oneself, true inner freedom remains elusive. Because compulsive explanation, in its very essence, is a highly sophisticated and insidious form of submission. It is as if with each justification offered, the individual is subconsciously uttering the plea, I can only truly exist if you grant me your explicit permission to do so. This video serves as a profound invitation to actively dismantle this deeply ingrained conditioning. It offers a thorough and incisive analysis of precisely why so many individuals live ensnared by this relentless need to justify themselves, and what truly transformative changes occur when they finally choose the profound power of silence. When they consciously decide to cease the endless explaining, something fundamentally and radically shifts. The psyche, which was previously bent and subservient before the altar of external approval, begins to straighten itself, rising with a newfound posture, the unwavering stance of internal authority. And this, quite literally, transforms absolutely everything in their world. Behind the pervasive need to explain oneself, there lies something far more profound and intricate than mere good manners, conventional education, or even the understandable human desire to be understood. It is, at its core, a deep psychic wound, subtly embedded within the very fabric of one's identity. Jung acutely understood that this compulsion for self-explanation is not merely a habitual behavior pattern. It is, more significantly, a symptom, a clear reflection of something much older and more deeply rooted. The unconscious belief that one's very existence, one's intrinsic worth, only gains validity when it is affirmed and sanctioned by others. This wound typically forms early in life, often in the crucible of childhood, within environments where the child's innate subjectivity and unique internal experience are continually delegitimized. When a child expresses a genuine sadness and is met with accusations of being dramatic or attention-seeking, when they display a natural anger and are labeled difficult or disrespectful, or when they reveal a tender fear and receive disdain, ridicule, or irony in return, they begin to internalize a deeply dangerous and self-destructive message. What I feel is inherently wrong or unacceptable. I can only truly trust the reactions and responses of others to determine my own reality. Over time, the child inevitably develops a sophisticated defense mechanism, constantly striving to be understood as a means to feel secure and protected. They learn that if they can articulate and explain what they feel well enough, they might avoid being punished, ignored, or ridiculed. And thus, a deeply ingrained pattern is born. A pattern that will tragically accompany them into adulthood, compelling them to justify every single emotion, every nuanced decision, every personal attitude, as if an irrefutable and convincing argument were an absolute prerequisite to having the right to feel and simply to be themselves. At the very root of this psychological wound lies the profound loss of internal authority. The person no longer perceives themselves as an individual whose unique experience is inherently valid and worthy in itself. Instead, they come to rely heavily on the external gaze, needing it to confirm whether their lived experience possesses any legitimacy or not. This dynamic creates a crippling psychological state of submission, where self-esteem is not organically built from within, but rather precariously constructed from the transient reflection seen in the eyes of others. It is absolutely crucial to grasp that this dynamic typically unfolds unconsciously. Often those who are trapped within this pattern are not even consciously aware that they are perpetually trying to convince others that their emotions are entirely reasonable, that their decisions are logically sound, and that their behavior is perfectly well motivated. Yet beneath every single explanation, there lurks a profound and hidden fear. The fear of being rejected for the simple, unadorned act of being who they authentically are. Jung forcefully asserted that every individual must, at some pivotal juncture in their life, confront this deeply inherited internal structure. Until they do, they remain condemned to operate perpetually according to the values, judgments, and expectations of others. Values often internalized from powerful authority figures in childhood, such as parents, teachers, or even religious leaders. The individual thus becomes a mere reflection of what others would approve of, rather than the vibrant, authentic expression of who they truly are. This compulsive self-explanation, therefore, is ultimately a profound form of self-abandonment. It is the tragic act of betraying one's own deepest truth in a desperate attempt to make it more palatable and acceptable to others. And it is precisely at this critical juncture that the arduous but transformative healing process truly begins. By recognizing, with a quiet but firm certainty, that you no longer need to beg for permission to exist, that your emotions, no matter how intense, contradictory, or seemingly strange they may appear, do not require elaborate justification to deserve inherent space and validity. However, this profound awakening does not unfold without its accompanying pain. When the individual courageously begins to embrace silence in the face of the ingrained need to justify, the quietude that emerges can be deeply disconcerting. It starkly reveals the internal void, the emptiness left by the long-standing absence of a consolidated internal authority. And it is precisely this phenomenon that Jung addresses when he introduces one of the foundational pillars of his analytical psychology, the conscious construction of internal authority. In the forthcoming segment, we will delve deeper into how this pivotal concept, so central to the Jungian process of individuation, can radically transform the way an individual fundamentally positions themselves in the world. What does it truly mean to diligently develop internal authority? And why is this the unequivocal key to finally breaking free from the suffocating cycle of self-explanation? If this profound content resonates with you and is providing genuine insight, please consider clicking the subscribe button and becoming a part of this channel. Your invaluable support is deeply appreciated. Compulsive self-explanation is far more than a mere defense mechanism. It is an ongoing, often unacknowledged act of self-betrayal. A silent betrayal, frequently imperceptible to the individual themselves, yet deeply corrosive to the very core of their being. Carl Jung understood with profound clarity that every time an individual meticulously shapes their words to avoid displeasing someone, hides their authentic emotions to maintain a fragile harmony, or suppresses their genuine decisions to circumvent judgment, they are, in essence, systematically distancing themselves from their true self. They are, in a very real and tragic sense, abandoning their own deepest truth. This insidious internal betrayal does not manifest explosively, like a sudden, violent rupture with the self. On the contrary, it is a gradual, subtle, day-by-day erosion. It occurs when you force a laugh at something you genuinely don't find funny, solely to appear sociable and agreeable. When you utter a yes, while your inner self screams no, merely to avoid being perceived as selfish or difficult. When you meticulously explain your sadness as mere tiredness, because you desperately don't want to burden others with your true feelings. When you feel a surge of anger but cunningly disguise it as cool rationality, fearing to appear immature or out of control. With each small, seemingly insignificant concession made in the name of external acceptance, a precious part of the soul is incrementally left behind. Jung astutely identified that this type of behavior is a direct and poignant reflection of the ego when it becomes dangerously disconnected from the self, with a capital S, representing the totality of the psyche. The ego, which should ideally serve as merely the functional center of consciousness, tragically transforms into a subservient servant of external acceptance. It meticulously reconfigures itself, adapting and shape-shifting to become precisely what others desire to see. And in this relentless process of constant adaptation, the individual loses vital touch with their authentic self. They stop listening to their own intuitive wisdom, begin to disbelieve their own genuine feelings, and increasingly question their most authentic motivations. Doubt, insidious and pervasive, slowly but surely takes the place of unwavering inner confidence. This process of self-abandonment is particularly insidious because it is often covertly and sometimes overtly socially valued. People who are perceived as well-adjusted, who always know how to explain themselves, who artfully avoid conflicts, and who are generally easy to get along with, are frequently lauded and praised by society. But behind this veneer of false harmony often lurks a deep and debilitating emotional exhaustion. An exhaustion born of those who live their lives primarily for others, but who have tragically lost the capacity to hear their own inner voice. Jung firmly asserted that this type of internal fragmentation is one of the primary root causes of neuroses. When the ego distances itself too severely from the self, the symbolic center of psychic wholeness and integration, a range of distressing symptoms inevitably arises. Chronic anxiety, profound existential crises, pervasive feelings of emptiness, debilitating difficulty in making even simple decisions, and persistently low self-esteem. And why does this happen? Because the soul, in its deep wisdom, is desperately screaming to be heard, but has been ruthlessly silenced in the name of social adaptation and external approval. At its most profound level, what is truly at stake here is a crucial and fundamental question. Whose life is it really? As long as you are perpetually seeking external approval to feel, to think, or to act, your very existence will remain a mere performance, a meticulously edited and heavily censored version of your authentic truth. You will forever be a character diligently playing a role in someone else's narrative, never truly the sovereign author of your own unfolding story. The only viable path to decisively break this debilitating cycle of self-betrayal is to consciously reclaim your inherent internal authority. It is to cultivate and develop the unwavering capacity to uphold your truth, even when it is not fully understood, even when it causes discomfort in others, and even when it directly challenges deeply entrenched expectations. This is the authentic genesis of true individuation, the courageous act of becoming truly whole, even if that wholeness means occasionally disappointing others. But how does one painstakingly cultivate this elusive internal authority? How can one cease the dependency on external understanding to affirm who you fundamentally are? How do you maintain a steadfast silence in the face of immense pressure for explanations? This is precisely what Jung meticulously proposes with his groundbreaking concept of individuation. And this is what we will explore with profound depth in the forthcoming segment. Because only when this internal authority is firmly established and integrated does silence cease to be a mere absence of sound and instead transforms into a powerful and unequivocal affirmation of self. For Carl Jung, genuine psychological freedom does not emanate from fleeting social acceptance or superficial external understanding. Rather, it robustly emerges from the diligent development of internal authority. This profound concept, central to his transformative theory of individuation, represents an individual's unwavering ability to validate their own subjective experience without any reliance on the fickle approval of others. It marks the pivotal moment when you cease to torment yourself with the question, "Will they understand what I feel?" and instead begin to assert with quiet conviction, "It doesn't matter if they understand. This is unequivocally true for me." Internal authority stands as the direct antithesis of compulsive self-explanation. While the latter is deeply anchored in pervasive insecurity and the desperate need to justify every step to be accepted, internal authority blossoms from the deep-seated conviction that your intrinsic truth requires no negotiation, no apology, and no external validation. And this monumental shift is not merely intellectual, it is profoundly existential, representing a complete reorientation of your inner axis. The very center of gravity of the psyche shifts dramatically. It gracefully moves from the precarious periphery of external approval back to the solid, unshakable center of the self, where the totality of one's being profoundly resides. However, this transformative transition is far from simple. It demands immense courage, because by deliberately choosing to cease explaining yourself, the individual directly confronts the primal fears of abandonment, the fear of harsh judgment, and the fear of social exclusion. Jung famously stated that individuation necessitates traversing the stark desert of inner solitude. That crucial moment when, perhaps for the very first time, you can firmly hold a no without being consumed by guilt. when you no longer feel compelled to justify your decision to change your mind, when you can gracefully end a conversation without providing an elaborate explanation for its conclusion, not out of arrogance, but simply because you inherently owe nothing to anyone, simply to exist as you are. Developing this vital internal authority does not in any way imply becoming insensitive or closed off to meaningful dialogue. Quite the contrary. It means that you no longer need to beg for understanding or plead for acceptance. Instead, you offer your truth as a generous gift, not as a desperate plea for validation. Communication ceases to be a theatrical performance aimed at approval and instead becomes an authentic, unadulterated expression of your inner world. It is the fundamental difference between speaking primarily to be approved of and speaking authentically to be true to oneself. In practical terms, internal authority powerfully manifests itself in countless small, daily gestures. In the dignified silence maintained in the face of unwarranted provocation, in the quiet firmness of stating, "That simply does not resonate with me," without feeling any obligation to explain why. In the unwavering refusal to participate in an emotional game where you perpetually feel compelled to justify your position. And, most importantly, in the profound ability to endure the inevitable discomfort of not being fully understood, and yet still remain utterly whole and grounded. Jung firmly believed that this represents one of the most crucial moments of the psychological journey, the instant when the individual ceases to outsource their self-esteem and begins to recognize it as something that intrinsically arises from within. This transition is both symbolic and incredibly powerful, as it marks the definitive break with the old, conditioned self, the self that existed solely to please others, and heralds the birth of a new, rooted, autonomous, and integrated self. However, this courageous new stance is rarely universally well received. In fact, quite the opposite. The powerful silence that emanates from internal authority often deeply disturbs those around you. People who previously benefited from your insecurity and compliant nature begin to lose their accustomed control. Manipulators feel profoundly threatened. Relationships that were subtly or overtly based on imbalanced power dynamics begin to visibly crumble. And that precisely is why, when you cease explaining yourself, everything in your world truly changes. In the next part, we will deeply immerse ourselves in this transformative turning point. Why does silence possess such immense power? What precisely happens to your relationships when you resolutely refuse to continue justifying who you are? Prepare yourself, because what follows may radically alter your perception of the connections you hold dear today. If what you're hearing profoundly resonates with your experience, you'll discover immense value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow meticulously breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious provides a practical 30-day pathway to apply these insights in your daily life. Both are conveniently linked in the pinned comment below. Silence, when it originates from a place of deep integrity and not from mere omission or avoidance, stands as one of the most profoundly transformative forces within the human psyche. Jung understood this with brutal and crystalline clarity. He perceived silence not merely as an absence of response, but rather as a powerful, undeniable presence of authority. When an individual decisively ceases to justify themselves compulsively, they are not simply avoiding petty conflicts or abruptly ending conversations. They are, in fact, deactivating an entire intricate system of psychological control that has long fed voraciously on their inherent insecurity. This particular type of silence is deeply unsettling to others, because for those who have always expected you to bow, to explain your every move, to meticulously correct yourself, the stark absence of justification is often interpreted as an act of outright rebellion. And, in a profound sense, it truly is. But it is not an immature, attention-seeking rebellion that screams loudly to be heard. It is instead a silent revolution, an implicit and powerful declaration. I owe no explanations to simply be who I am. Manipulative individuals who thrive by feeding on the doubts and insecurities of others begin to irrevocably lose their manipulative grip. Because emotional manipulation can only truly function effectively when there is a perceptible vulnerability, when there is a deep-seated fear of being misunderstood, a primal fear of being abandoned, or a pervasive fear of disappointing. Manipulation desperately needs reactivity to survive, but the secure and grounded silence, which emanates from a place of unshakable internal authority, is like an impenetrable stone wall. It does not react. It does not justify itself. It does not dance to anyone else's tune. It simply is. And this inherent stability completely destabilizes any and all attempts at external control. Furthermore, relationships that have historically depended on your submission, be it emotional, intellectual, or behavioral, begin to reveal themselves for what they truly are: fragile, inherently one-sided, and fundamentally based on an unhealthy imbalance. When you definitively stop explaining yourself, you are courageously breaking an implicit pact of inferiority. You cease to position yourself as someone who desperately needs to be accepted, and instead begin to powerfully occupy the space of someone who already profoundly accepts themselves. And this, without exaggeration, changes absolutely everything. Some people will inevitably distance themselves, and it is crucial to understand that this is not a sign of your error, but rather a necessary and healthy realignment. Because your emerging silence begins to function as a powerful filter. It starkly reveals who was genuinely by your side out of authentic affinity and mutual respect, and who was only present because you were conveniently easy to control. Jung sagely remarked that the process of individuation often necessitates ruptures. And this distancing is not a punishment, it is a profound liberation. When you cease justifying your presence, your essential boundaries, your personal choices, you automatically begin to attract relationships based on genuine mutual respect, rather than on underlying fear or debilitating dependence. However, you must be prepared for an internal challenge, because by stopping the constant explanations, you will also inevitably have to contend with your own deep-seated anxiety. The part of you that for decades learned that you needed to be understood to possess value will fiercely resist this change. It will desperately want to revert to justifying itself. It will beg you to reconsider, to just explain this once. It is in these very moments that silence transforms into a spiritual exercise, a conscious, courageous act of remaining whole and integrated, even in the face of profound internal discomfort. Silence, therefore, is not merely the absence of words, it is the powerful affirmation of being. It is the resolute refusal to put your inherent identity on trial. And the more consistently you sustain this silence, the more it transforms into a potent presence, a presence that quietly emanates authority, that commands respect without ever needing to raise its voice, that establishes firm boundaries without requiring overt confrontation, a presence that needs absolutely no external approval to fundamentally exist. But the profound impact of silence extends far beyond your relationships with others. It initiates an even deeper process within your own psyche: integration. When you stop justifying yourself, you courageously begin to listen to your own inner voice. When you stop meticulously rationalizing your emotions, you start to feel them fully, completely, and authentically. And that, precisely, is where true and lasting transformation truly begins. Because external silence creates sacred space for internal listening. In the next part, we will explore this essential and transformative turning point, how the profound authority you gain in front of the world actually begins with a powerful internal movement, the return to your own psychological integrity. You will come to understand why truly integrated people do not merely convince others, they authentically communicate. And why, when you courageously adopt this powerful posture, the entire world begins to treat you in an entirely different and more respectful manner. There is an undeniable magnetism emanating from a person who feels absolutely no need to explain themselves. It's an elusive quality that cannot be faked, forced, or manufactured. This magnetism is rooted in deep psychological integrity, the state of someone who no longer negotiates their own essential nature to conform to external expectations. Jung recognized this profound integrity as one of the most mature and powerful expressions of individuation. It's when the individual not only intellectually knows their truth, but courageously upholds it, without hesitation, without guilt, and most importantly, without any need for external validation. An integrated person does not beg others to be understood. They communicate their thoughts, feelings, and perspectives with clarity. They express their authentic self, but they do not convince, because they do not operate from the underlying premise that they need to justify their very existence. Their words emanate from a solid, internal core, not from a hidden sense of lack or insecurity. This fundamental shift changes everything in the way they are perceived by others. The world, in a subtle but profound way, treats with greater respect those who treat themselves with unwavering respect. And genuine self-respect begins when you steadfastly refuse to negotiate what is essential and non-negotiable within you. Psychological integrity does not imply rigidity or inflexibility. On the contrary, it signifies profound coherence. It is the unwavering ability to maintain an internal line of truth, even in the face of intense external pressure or disagreement. It's when you feel an inexplicable discomfort in a particular situation, and even without being able to articulate or explain it rationally, you courageously trust your gut feelings. You don't feel the need to present irrefutable evidence or construct elaborate, persuasive arguments. You simply state, "This doesn't resonate with me," and that in itself is entirely sufficient. This stance, which appears deceptively simple, is utterly revolutionary in a world where the majority live disconnected from their true selves, where decisions are often made based on the opinions of others, where genuine feelings are frequently ignored for fear of seeming too sensitive, and where personal boundaries are routinely violated with forced smiles to avoid appearing difficult. Integrity is the precise opposite of this pervasive trend. It is the profound art of being whole, of refusing to fragment yourself into palatable pieces to please others, of not hiding your true self to avoid conflict. Jung knew that true transformation does not occur when you merely accumulate more theories or knowledge, but when you powerfully embody a new, authentic stance towards life itself. And this transformative stance begins with the resolute refusal to justify oneself. Because every compulsive justification carries a camouflaged insecurity. Am I enough? The truly integrated person no longer asks this question. They know with an unshakable certainty that they are inherently enough, even when the world adamantly insists on saying otherwise. And here lies the profound paradox. The less you seek external approval, the more genuine respect you naturally evoke. Because integrity carries weight, it possesses density, it radiates an undeniable presence. That is why, often without uttering a single word, a truly centered person can fundamentally alter the dynamics of an entire environment. They do not need to prove anything to anyone. Their inherent internal coherence already communicates everything that needs to be understood. People like this do not beg for space, they effortlessly occupy it. They do not react out of insecurity. They act from a place of deep alignment with their true self. But there is an essential detail to grasp. This profound integrity is only truly possible when you stop actively betraying yourself. When you cease molding yourself into what others desire just to be accepted. When you courageously give yourself explicit permission to feel, to choose, to act, even if absolutely no one else understands your reasoning. This requires consistent practice, demands profound presence, and necessitates deep self-knowledge. But above all, it requires the immense courage to take full responsibility for your own existence, without blaming others, and without outsourcing your intrinsic value to anyone or anything external. And when this profound integrity finally settles in, and becomes a part of your being, the effects are truly profound. Your relationships transform. The way you position yourself professionally undergoes a significant shift. Your self-perception becomes clearer, more authentic, and more stable. Anxiety diminishes dramatically. The relentless need to control what others think about you simply disappears, because you cease living to be merely understood, and instead you start living authentically, to be true to yourself. But there is something even deeper at play. Something that happens not only in the way you interact with the world, but in what you begin to emanate into it. When you stop justifying yourself, you start to emit a distinctly new energy. The powerful energy of someone who is fully in control of themselves, and this energy is unconsciously perceived and responded to by everyone around you. This is where the truly invisible shift occurs. The world begins in its own subtle way to treat you as someone who does not negotiate their truth. In this final and conclusive part, we will explore precisely how this deep psychological integrity profoundly transforms your entire relationship with the external world. How, often without uttering a single word, you come to be respected in ways that once seemed utterly unattainable. And why, when you courageously stop explaining yourself, the entire world fundamentally changes the way it responds to your powerful and authentic presence. When a person definitively stops explaining themselves, everything, not just within them, but all around them, undergoes a radical transformation. It is as if a distinctly new frequency begins to be emitted from their very core. You no longer quietly plead, "Please understand me." Instead, you emanate, with a quiet but powerful conviction, "I know who I am, and I absolutely do not need your permission to exist." And the world, in its own inevitable way, responds accordingly. Jung profoundly understood that the human psyche is primarily guided by energetic presence, by an internal structure, and not by mere rational justifications. The person who constantly strives to be understood emits a pervasive vibration of submission, of doubt, of uncertainty. The one who no longer explains themselves, however, emits an unwavering strength, a crystal clarity, an inherent authority. And this transformation is not about becoming arrogant or aloof. It is about finally becoming truly whole. People begin to listen to you in a fundamentally different manner. Unbalanced relationships, those that once sapped your energy and peace, cease to make any sense in your new reality. Dynamics where you were once submissive, predictable, and easily controlled simply collapse, not because you actively fought against them, but because you are simply no longer available to play the same disempowering role. This embrace of silence profoundly changes the entire configuration of your relationships, because it now communicates what you once desperately begged for. It says unequivocally, "I am not here to be shaped or molded. I am here simply to be." And from this powerful stance, you begin to naturally attract a profoundly different kind of connection, deeper, more honest, and far more aligned with the authentic person you have courageously become. Respect, in its truest form, originates from the inside out, and the very first, most crucial step in cultivating this respect is precisely to stop justifying your own inherent existence. However, this transformative journey demands unwavering presence, because in moments of doubt or vulnerability, the old impulse to explain yourself will inevitably return with a powerful pull. It will whisper that it feels safer to please, that it feels easier to yield. And it is in those precise moments that you must profoundly remember. Every single time you silence an explanation, you are powerfully reaffirming yourself. You are consolidating your intrinsic integrity. You are bravely taking your rightful place in the world, not as someone who desperately begs for space, but as someone who already deeply knows they inherently belong. So now I invite you to share in the comments below, what is the explanation you find yourself repeating the most, and that deep down you already know you no longer truly wish to give? Perhaps it's about your emotions, your boundaries, or simply your unique way of being. Write it down. This is more than just a momentary release, it's a profound turning point. And if this powerful message has confronted or inspired you in any meaningful way, Please do not keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it generously with those you know who explain themselves too much, and subscribe to this channel for more insights. The next video is also an essential companion on this journey. Watch it now. You will understand precisely why.